Well, hi there, everybody. We're fitting in another Gary Neville podcast before we go off to the World Cup, and we're talking from this favourite stadium of ours, and we've seen a pretty decent game between Liverpool getting their first away win of the season, excellent for them, and a Tottenham side that set out a stall, go to a script, don't play well in the first half and do better in the second half. What did you make of it?
Yeah, before the game, when I saw the teams, I couldn't see how Spurs could win the game other than maybe by a goal to nil. And I thought the game would be a real struggle just by the way that Spurs set up. Against Marseille the other night, I watched the game, and in the first half they were so rigid in that 4-5-1. And when they saw the team with only Kane up front, with the rest of them effectively midfield players and wing-backs, I just thought it would be a very sort of turgid game, almost like played in mud. But it didn't turn out to be that way, because Liverpool getting the goal just meant that it opened up a little bit. And, you know, Tottenham, I have to say that, I mean, Antonio Conte, his teams have real resilience, they have robustness, they have a methodology to them, and he's a great manager, and he could get Tottenham, and I think he may get Tottenham in the top 4 this season. But the balance sometimes of the team is so defensive that it means that if they do go a goal or two down, it doesn't look right. And I have to say, from the very first minute, it's the thing about that system. He played 5-3-2. He didn't play 5-4-1, sorry. Against Marseille, he did play 5-4-1, then he changed it second half. Today was 5-3-2. And I've got a real, problem with that system. It's my least favourite system in football.
Can you explain why?
Yeah, I feel that it was my favourite system to play against. So when we were at Old Trafford, if a team played 5-3-2, we would pin down the two opposite wing-backs by Beckham and Giggs, pushing them out, and so they couldn't come out. And then you've got the three in midfield have got to cover the whole width of the midfield. And that means that if the two full-backs, me and, say, Dennis Irwin, somehow if the ball got into Scholes, wherever it was, they could just switch the play to me or Dennis, because the wing-back on the far side couldn't get out because he was, say, with Giggsy. It meant the three were coming across and that you couldn't get out on the other side. You need a minimum of 4 players, really, to sort of cover the width of the pitch. And so I always felt as though there was an easy out if we played against that system. If I played in that system...
Which you did for England.
For England under Glenn Hoddle, I always felt there was an easy out. Although I have to say, Glenn coached it very well. Probably it's the best I've ever seen a manager coach that system. What Glenn used to do was, if the three in midfield shuffled across to a side, your real exposure is the opposite side. If the fullback on the opposite side and the wide player on the opposite side can get a 2v1, what he used to do would say to the two strikers, the first striker, let's say the ball's on this side with the fullback, the right back, he'd bring one striker across to the right centre-back, and the second striker would have to split the left centre-back and the left back, so that if that switch of play went, that second striker could get out there. Tottenham didn't do that. Perisic and Kane were narrow. So you had Alexander-Arnold, but particularly Robertson on that first...
It was apparent, really, from the first minute, wasn't it?
Yeah, in that first minute, because I know that system really well, to play against it and in it. And I thought straight away, Robertson's seen the game. You talk about players smelling the fixture, smelling the game. Where's the game? Sometimes I used to think, right, the game's here today. Sometimes you think, I'm not winning this game for us today. I'm not even contributing to winning this game for us. But if it was, say, me and Bex down one side, and I thought we were playing against a weak fullback and there wasn't any cover in front of them because they were playing the 5-3-2, I'd say, right, it's my game. I've got to be there all the time. Boom, just go. And my contribution was ordinarily the decoy run for the space for the cross, or it might be the overlap or the underlap to get passes in. But generally today, Andy Robertson, credit to him. We always talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold with the attacking, but Robertson smelt where the game was from the very first minute, and I thought, he's clever, Robertson. He's a smart fullback, not just a great fullback. He's a smart fullback, and he gets down that side, and then the first goal comes from it. So, yeah, that system really, I don't have great memories of it. And sometimes I did play for Terry and for Glenn and for Steve McLaren. I say famously, people might not even remember, but in Croatia, when we didn't get to the 2008 World Cup, I played right wing back in that system, and I hated it. Partly because I didn't have the energy system to be a right wing back, partly because I didn't have the skill to be a right wing back in that 5-3-2, because you need to be able to, not just back then, not just now, but even back then as a right wing back, you needed to be a Christian Ziege type player or a Cafu who could dribble, they could score, they were comfortable in at the back post, they could play 1-2s. I wasn't that type of fullback. I was a server, and then I could overlap and I could cross. It wasn't suited to me even as a wing back. So I just thought straight away today, Conte leaving Robertson open on that side, I just felt really was a problem for Spurs. Now, people might say, yeah, but that only cost them 1 goal. It did. But control is everything in a big match. And if you've got an easy out pass, that we used to say, where's your easy out pass?
What it did do, Gary, it gave Liverpool, with no away wins this season, a real leg up early on.
It did. It gave them a leg up. It gave them a footing in the game. It let them build a foundation. And not just then from the foundation did they go and get the first goal. They went and exploited it by getting the second goal. Now, it was a mistake, but it was brilliant from Salah. I suppose the two things in the first half for me that stood out were the sort of system element of it and Robertson's space, but then the form of Salah. We saw his re-emergence as the player that he is, which is world class. I think he scored 3 in midweek against Rangers in the Champions League, but then we saw him against City in the game after that, wasn't it? Where the start of that run, this run that he's currently on, is 8 in 8.
I think it's 9 in 8 now.
9 in 8 now, sorry,
yeah,
of course it is. Yeah, it's 9 in 8 now. You know, up until that Rangers game, he'd been in a difficult run for him. You know, we expect obviously him to be at this high level all the time. But today, his touch, his awareness, his composure in the final third. I mean, Núñez does really well. Núñez is the threat, but Salah's the class. He's the class. They can learn so much, Núñez, from Salah, because Núñez is raw.
He's a blunt instrument,
yeah,
and Salah's a very sophisticated weapon.
He's an unpolished diamond.
Yeah.
You know, he makes the runs. He's a threat. He's a nuisance. He challenges. He harasses. But then sometimes it's just a little bit. I used the word scruffy in the first half. You used the word a blunt instrument. It's absolutely right. But I think if he's around Salah, if I was Núñez, I would just watch Salah constantly in terms of what he does in the final third, and particularly in the box. I used to admire the strikers that I played with so much, because as a defender, I can't, in my mind, get my head around how they were so cold and composed in the box, to be able just to see the fact that defenders are coming charging out of them. The moment to turn, to twist, the touch, the shot, the fake to shoot because they see a defender flying in. I can't see that. I played at a high level. I can't see that in my game.
Harry Kane certainly got that. And,
Kane's got that.
Tottenham go away defeated, but they've constructed a beautiful goal. And for England fans, of course, it's a great sight to see the captain do something like that in a big game like this.
Yeah, I highlighted him before the game because I did think the game would be a challenge for him, because I never saw how he would get in the game without the runners past him from Mauro Kulusevski. But as soon as Kulusevski came on, Perisic goes out wide, he started to come in the game, and he had a big impact in that last 25 minutes. The goal was classic. He's a brilliant striker, Harry Kane. He's precise, he's definite, he's sure, he knows where the goal is. He's as certain as it comes, really, in terms of sort of a striker when you're finishing. You'd put him in that channel for your life, wouldn't you, really? We're right behind it here. It was absolutely brilliant. Little pass and then the shot. And then the little sort of header that nearly gets Spurs the equaliser before the end. I think Harry Kane can feel really... He won't feel good because his team have lost, but I think he'll feel good about how he has come into that game. He looked lively, he looked like he had his legs back. I know
he's 1 goal nearer Jimmy Greaves.
Yeah. And look, he's an unbelievable goal scorer. He could break all the records that exist in this country. But they just left themselves too much to do. And I used the phrase at the end when you threw to me, and I nearly said it in commentary. It's almost like that a horse that's left the run too late, and you see the sort of jockey frantically on the edge trying to whip the horse, really, go on.
Conte was the jockey.
Yeah, he was the jockey whipping his team, but the problem was he'd left the run too late, and he tactically, that's got to happen from the very first part of the game. Yes, you can come back maybe against Marseille, you can come back against Bournemouth, but against a top team, of which Liverpool obviously are and have been, certainly in the last few years, they just left themselves too much to do. And I think the setup and mentality of the team at the beginning is, to me, like a glass half empty rather than the glass half full. And you can see that in the players. And in the second half, they come out, they're almost made to go for it, and then they respond. But it's almost like, why do they have to wait for that sort of why do they have to wait for to go down? Why do they have to wait for the second half for these moments to occur? So there's a mentality thing there that's developing, and it's a pattern now for Spurs, and only Conte and the Spurs players can answer that question.
Well, let's go on to the top of the table because we've had Arsenal winning at Chelsea today, and because we've been working, we haven't seen that much of it, but we've seen enough to know that Arsenal were very good value for it. And the scoreline doesn't matter really; the win is what matters. And the statement after Manchester City had got their win very late on Saturday. That's some response for a team that's constantly been questioned about whether they've got the stamina to last the race.
We have to question them, Martin. I know Spurs fans. Arsenal fans come at me every single week, because I will still continue to question them until I don't see a moment like I did with 5-6 games to go here last season, and they get through those moments and they finish second, or they finish fourth, or they finish third, or they finish top, which would be out of this world, because they haven't proven it yet. It's like a boxer who hasn't won the world title, or who hasn't won a national title. It's like a team that haven't, shown you something that they need to do. You have to question them. But what you cannot question is that was a really, really good performance. We saw Manchester United at Stamford Bridge, didn't we? And I thought, Arsenal in the first half. I watched the first half, Martin, before I set off for this game, and I didn't see the second half. But even little things for me in the first half that were quite interesting. Watching the long throws from Arsenal.
Thomas Partey, yeah.
Yeah. I liked it because Arteta is obviously a coach that likes progressive football. He likes the idea of playing through the thirds. His team play great football, but the idea that he's also willing to put a long throw in against Chelsea today with Partey or against other teams.
And they won the game from a set piece.
Yeah, and I like it.
Yeah.
And I think the fact they won the game from a set piece, I always think that teams that demonstrate weakness, they lose away from home, they concede goals on set pieces, they don't come from behind. They're the patterns of a team that haven't got any resilience or robustness and toughness. Arsenal in this first period of the season, we're only 13, 14 games in, depending on which part of the table you're in. I think some teams have played 13, some 14. So it's very, very early. We've got this unique season, an unusual happening, an event of a World Cup right smack bang in the middle of it, and we don't know how players are going to come out of the back of that. So the reason there has to be a question is because we don't know what's going to happen on the other side. And the big part of the season where it really matters is yet to come. But Arsenal are fantastic in this first part of the season. They're the real value team. They're playing great football. I love watching their front players. I love Jesus. I love Saka. I love Martinelli. Absolutely fantastic. And Ødegaard is class. He's class. But I want to see it over 38 games. And we've seen over these last few years that this Arsenal group of players, they've added to them this season, I've just found it more difficult in the last parts of the season. That is not being overly negative. It's just suggesting, let's see what happens in 20 games' time when there's 33 games gone. But I really, at this moment in time, feel Arsenal are bang on to finish in the top four. I feel that they will, to be fair, fall behind City by some distance towards the end, because I think City are the top team. But that wouldn't be any shame. If Arsenal finish second this season, that would be a magnificent achievement for Mikel Arteta. They're playing amazing football. They look like the real deal. They look like they're going to get closer.
And get better.
They're young. They've got a good age. They've got a great spirit. The Arsenal fans are loving their team again. They've just got to show us, as the season keeps on moving, as we come out of the World Cup into January, into February, that's when the interesting times will really start to happen. And I'm getting more confident by the week for them that it's going to happen. But I don't think we're wrong to continue to question that they haven't proven that they can deal with the business end of the season.
I can't let you go without asking you about Manchester United. We managed to get some feed up on these monitors up here for you to watch some of it. The die had been cast, I think, by the time that you joined it. But did you see anything that you'd like to comment on here?
No, because we watched. I think we got the pictures for the last 20-25 minutes, didn't we? I'm surprised by that today. Well done to Unai Emery. Fantastic result for Villa. Really is a fantastic result. And I think I said to you before the game, I always feel for the outgoing manager a little bit, but Unai Emery comes in. He's a world-class manager. I know his time at Arsenal, to be fair, didn't really show that, but he is a fantastic manager who achieves great things. And no, I'm surprised. I thought United would beat Villa today. I thought that that has shocked me a little bit. I think, when they said they were 2-0 down and they scored just before half-time, I thought, well, OK, here we go, second half. They'll either get back in and get a draw or may even go and win it. But no, I think it was Jacob Ramsey scored. I think he scored the own goal, but I think he scored again the third goal. So I didn't see that goal. But you just think about United today. It's a dip. But overall, Martin, I'm not wholly convinced by United at all in terms of them. This idea that Manchester United are back. They're not. They're not back. They're nowhere near Manchester City. Let's be clear.
More watchable?
They're more watchable, and I think they've got a bit more fight. I think that, a couple of the players who've come in, Eriksen's brought real quality in midfield. I think Martinez, to be fair, has done fantastically well at the back. He's brought a tenacity that even I think the part of the game I saw, I think he had a little bit, I can't remember who it was with, one of the Villa players where he left them on the touchline. So he's brought a real tenacity back, but they keep getting injuries to his pairing. He can't keep a steady pair. Varane gets injured, and Maguire came in last week, and then Lindelof's in midweek and today, so that's a real problem. But Manchester United's front three, I think I said it actually last week, they are the weakest out of the top six. You think of Kulusevski, Kane and Son, Manchester United would definitely take those three. Arsenal's front three, Jesus, Martinelli and Saka, they'd definitely take over the three they have. Liverpool's front three of Nunez, Diaz, Jota, Salah and Firmino, you'd definitely choose three of them over United's. Chelsea, I think Sterling, Havertz, I'm trying to think who else they've got up front there, Aubameyang, you'd definitely probably take those three even. So I think Manchester United's front players aren't as good as they should be. Ten Hag, I think, is getting the maximum out of them. I don't know where the money's gone again, you know what I mean? I always feel like that with United. You look at the spend over the last 4 or 5 years, they're still not as good as they should be, but I think Erik ten Hag, he needs that 2, 3, 4 years in the job. He needs that 3 or 4 transfer windows, because there's signs that they are getting better, but they're not back. They're getting better, but they're not back. Back is when you're seeing them sort of challenging the top, when they really are a fantastic football team. That's not happening at this moment in time. Erik ten Hag will recognise that his team are far away from where he wants them to be, but there is spirit there. There is a tenacity in the team that hasn't been there in the first couple of weeks of the season, that wasn't there and wasn't evident under Ralf Rangnick. So there is things that are better, but they're not back.
We'll leave the World Cup till next week. We've got another podcast hopefully scheduled for that. So I want to finish with another United, Newcastle United, live on Sky Sports, 4 goals. Yeah. Yes, Southampton are struggling, but still they're starting to look very much a team to be reckoned with, without blowing their own trumpet too much. But there they are, third in the table, Newcastle United.
Absolutely. Well, it's not incredible, because obviously we know from the fact that when Saudi Arabia came in, that there was going to be more money put in and that they were going to buy better players. But I think the early signings have been measured. I don't think they've been sort of like, you see sometimes, sovereign wealth funds coming to football clubs, and all of a sudden there has to be a star to pin to it, a badge of honour almost. We've not seen that with Newcastle, actually. They've been a lot more measured in terms of how they've gone about it, bringing in a manager who you would think straight away. They've not brought in, Eddie Howe, I think he is fashionable, but he wouldn't be deemed as being a fashionable manager.
Not a celebrity manager.
Not a celebrity manager, yeah, that's what I was trying to say. And I think the way in which they've done it has been quite controlled, and they've built a spirit, and they've got a good team ethic, and they're getting more out of the players who were there before. When you think of some of the
Almiron particularly.
Almiron, we were watching Almiron there and thinking, what's happened to him? He was almost ridiculed, wasn't he, for the first year or two that he was at the club. And now all of a sudden we're looking at him thinking, what a player he looks. So you look at Newcastle, and we shouldn't be totally surprised by the fact that they've improved. But the biggest thing for me is the Newcastle United fans, in terms of their, they were depressed for a
long suffering.
Yeah, their ambitions were depressed for a long, long time. They were. It was painful to go up there. When you've seen the good, and I'm not talking about the good of winning leagues and winning trophies, I'm talking about the good in terms of the style of football, the atmosphere, the spirit in the club. Then when you went up there for those years, and I've said this many, many times on this podcast, it was like, you get your fixtures through and you've got Newcastle versus so-and-so. That I don't feel like that anymore about getting Newcastle games, because that atmosphere's back. And I have to say that, they're doing really, really well. They're doing really, really well. And I know there's the sort of the contentiousness around the ownership, especially with the World coming up, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Abu Dhabi seem to get away a little bit scot-free in Manchester, because I think they've been here maybe 10, 12 years. But I think it's going to come to the fore in the next few weeks, and Eddie Howe keeps getting challenged on it. But what it has brought back is a spirit to the Newcastle fans.
With lovely shots in our coverage, actually, from the pitch level up, with the players on the pitch celebrating and the fans in all their... they were the first fans to get, I think, replica shirts, the black and white stripes.
Well, you used to go up to Newcastle, and to be honest with you, you St James's Park, we used to play up there always around Christmas, and you think, this lot are bloody mad. Every single one of them's got a shirt. Every single one of them has a black and white shirt, and half of them, to be fair, have not got anything on underneath it, and it's like -3, and you're thinking, gee, they don't even get cold up here. So it's like, that is Newcastle. That's what we all think of Newcastle. We all used to think of Newcastle as players. When we used to go up there, you used to think, this lot are mad, don't let them get a goal. You know, that was a ground where you would say, let's shut the crowd up. You know, you think about sort of the away tactic of a team, get through that first 10, 15 minutes, pass the ball, move it quickly, make sure that you kill that crowd. They'll be at you like you wouldn't believe. And, you know, Sir Alex, I can hear him saying, it'll be like a bloody circus out there for the first 10, 15 minutes. He said, then it'll go. And you'll feel that moment where it goes. But the Newcastle fans create a great atmosphere. And, you know, to see them happy again is a big thing. It's a big thing, because one thing about football fans is they've got to like the team have got to like the fans. There's got to be that connection in victory and defeat. And I have to say that it wasn't there for a long, long time.
Gary, thank you.
Thank you.